We're in discussion this morning with Philip Rosenthal from the Christian View Network, and he's the spokesperson of the Christian View Network, rather. Philip, good morning, and thank you for joining us. How are you?
Good morning, Mosangi. Yes, I'm well.
So this is a very complex topic that we're discussing here, especially when it affects children. What are your main concerns regarding the gender identity policy by the Western Cape Education Department?
Okay, well, at the moment there are huge divisions based on gender in every school. For example, in terms of what bathrooms people are allowed to use, what sport they play, what change rooms they go into. And the proposal would be to break down those boundaries according to what pupils choose to self-identify with. So, in other words, if a boy decided that he wanted to self-identify as a girl, he would be then allowed into girls' change rooms, girls' toilets, to compete in girls' sport, which from our point of view, and I think most parents would probably be also very concerned, is really asking for trouble. We've already got an out-of-control situation in many areas where there are girls that are being sexually abused, and this is just going to increase that problem. There's also the problem that girls are physically not nearly as strong as boys, and so that the boys are going to end up winning in the school sports, and the girls won't be fairly able to compete. Then there's also extra costs that the schools would have to use to accommodate all these LGBT learners who may be only one person in the school, but now they have to make special arrangements for them in terms of, for example, sleeping arrangements if they want to go into hostel and they want to identify as a girl or something like that. Whereas at the moment, it's very simple. If you're a boy, you're going to the boys' facilities, and you're a girl, you're going to the girls' facilities.
Have you sought any advice from the LGBTQI organizations at all? Because even in my own heteronormative socialization, I know there are so many limitations towards the plethora of topics, and I don't even have the range for those, and I expose myself to my own ignorance. Have you been able to reach out to LGBTQI organizations or communities for advice?
Well, I certainly wouldn't want their advice. They're the ones who are proposing these things against the interests of parents, and I think that they're wanting to use the schools as a recruitment ground to try and get people into their lifestyle. And, for example, they're requiring principals to refer these children directly to them without informing the parents. So the principal is required to secretly send the children to them to learn about the LGBT lifestyle, just because they have some gender confusion, instead of getting some help from their parents and from other people to normalize the thing. But what we certainly are in communication with are people who have come out of that lifestyle, who've changed their minds, and these types of things are disastrous because, for example, if you start taking hormones for trying to change your gender, and you have surgery to take away your sex organs, then that's not reversible. So if a number of years later, as some people have done, the person decides, no, they want to go back to their normal gender that they were born with, which is a natural thing to do, they can't reverse that. But now the schools would be expected to now support this. And I think that parents just have to say no to this and not allow this institutionalized abuse into the schools.
Would you say that the Christian View Network is in danger, perhaps, of oppressing certain choices and lifestyles that people may make with identifying with their gender?
No, I think that these choices are inherently oppressive and that people are going to regret them later in life, and one can help people, especially when they start experiencing gender confusion at school or temptation in these areas, to to remedy the problem. As the person stays longer and longer in that lifestyle, it becomes more difficult. They can come out of it, and we can refer people to having those struggles to organizations which can help them, and have successfully brought many people out of that. But no, I think the lifestyle itself is oppressive, and coming out of it is liberating.
I do agree that people who choose a different identity than being heterosexual experience oppression. Would you agree that people who are not heterosexual are oppressed from inwardly within their schools and in society in general?
Well, I think that there's a difficulty here where people are feeling oppression due to the fact that they know that what they're doing is inherently unnatural, but then they look for something external to blame that on. So it's really their feeling of oppression is a frustration with their own choices and their own behaviors, but they then decide to blame that on people who oppose that. Mm-hmm. So I don't really I don't really accept the view that living with the gender that you were born with is oppressive. No.
All right. I think we need to have a broader discussion, especially on those kind of terms and things like gender confusion as well. What would you like to say to the Western Cape Education Department?
Well, we want them to scrap this policy completely. It's got problems in every single paragraph, so we don't believe that this policy can be fixed. And also believe that they need to fire whoever was responsible for writing this policy and make sure they don't write any more policies for the Western Cape Education Department. But really, it's reached a point where parents have to defend their children against this type of ideological agenda. And I think that some parents will, if they push ahead with this, will not be sending their children back to school after the coronavirus lockdown because it is simply putting their children at risk.
Do you feel that parents have been consulted enough regarding the draft gender identity policy?
Well, they've put it out for comment as they are legally required to do. But if you look at the phrasing inside of it, they also talk about consultation inside specific schools, but their idea of consultation seems to be to try and educate parents to believe in their worldview. So they seem to, and they also want to educate children to view anybody's opinion that's against this as kind of what they call a phobia or transphobia. So in other words, they view parents who don't like this as transphobic, which is another way of kind of implying a mental illness. And so I don't view their consultation as in good faith at all. I think they're pushing an agenda and they're just trying to manipulate their way, and we have to stop them.
How do you feel the draft gender identity policy will change school life?
Well, we firstly hope that it won't change school life because we want to stop the policy. But if they do not, if it is not stopped, it will put children, especially girls, more at risk of sexual abuse. They won't be able to feel safe in their own change rooms or bathrooms. They can be looked at by a male who's walking into that bathroom. It will also disadvantage girls. They may be more at risk of being injured in sport by a male posing as a female. They will not win their races. And this is already happening in places like Canada and America where they've implemented these types of policies where the girls can't win in provincial sport anymore because you've got boys competing in the girls' races. Then one's also got the whole propaganda element that they're proposing to integrate their agenda into every single subject, so you won't be able to opt out of it. So I think parents need to wake up and realize that they cannot just say, well, we'll deal with this later or if the matter arises, because they're facing a comprehensive agenda that's seeking to gain control of the machinery of the schools and even to punish those principles which would not implement it.
Can you explain radical gender ideology to us?
Well, this is an ideology that believes that the people are not naturally male or female, but that they can choose their gender identity at some later stage in life, and through using surgery or and hormones and dressing differently, that they can change their identity. It also incorporates the promotion of homosexuality, bisexuality, and this policy also includes some new terms like they call pansexuality or omnisexuality, which is, I think, a kind of idea that you can change your orientation as you go along. But we would say that this is all just an ideology that they're pushing forward. They've got a whole language behind it, and they seek to force everybody else to go along with their ideology, just like Marxism tried to force everybody to go along with their ideology and tried to force their agenda through schools. So I think one has to recognize that this is not just a group of people who are a minority that's seeking protection. This is a group that is seeking to completely change both the thinking and the behavior of the majority, and to break down natural gender distinctions and gender roles. But I think it would also include feminism, the idea, radical feminism, the idea that the men and women do not have natural roles in society, and the gender ideology also tends to flow into the abortion debate as well, because then they would say that you have a right to kill an unborn baby in order to get rid of a problem, so that doesn't impede your career. So which we would also very strongly disagree with. So it's got quite a comprehensive agenda.
Yeah, Philip, I hear you, and some of your arguments I understand to a certain extent when you talk about people who may try to use certain structures where gender identity is being welcomed into conversations. The structure of a family, Philip, it's not as traditional as back in the day. Are you open to households where a child, perhaps, how do you explain to a child who has two fathers, who has two mothers, how do you explain that in that discussion their family is not, in inverted commas, normal or acceptable in society?
Well, I don't think that I don't support the idea of a family having two fathers. I think that's part of this radical gender identity, where there's ideology. We can see from statistics that children who are brought up in such families do not do as well as children that have both a father and a mother.
Would you care to mention where these statistics are?
Look, I can put up a link onto our Facebook page if that would be helpful. You can go to Facebook/Christian View Network. But the situation is that a child needs a mother and a father. Not every child has a mother and a father. Many children only have a mother because the father is absent, but at least there is a hope that situation can change, that the mother can marry at some point and then have a father. But this idea of a same-sex parenting would then deny the child the benefit of either a mother or a father, and that's something that they're going to be missing in their life. And such children really miss the input of that other gender.
So what are you saying to this child, Philip? Or what are you saying to them? Because they in a heteronormative playground, for example, they are exposed to children who don't understand the complexity of the new family structure, and they get bullied, probably they make fun of, they get teased, they get traumatized. So how do we protect the children who do have these type of parent structure relationships?
Well, you're assuming that when I accept that parent structure. I don't. I've spoken out against it many times before. I spoke out against the legalization of same-sex marriage. It's wrong. It's unnatural. The family. So no, I don't support that. So that is one shouldn't try to normalize something that is not natural or not beneficial. And this is part of this radical gender ideology which is being foisted on us.
All right. Philip Rosenthal, Christian View Network spokesperson, talking to us about the gender identity policy by the Western Cape Education Department. Friday, 19th of June, 2020 was the deadline for comment. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get a hold of the Western Cape Education Department, but